morning, friends. I'm Thomas Walker, here to share with you a story, an event that changed the course of history and left a lasting mark on the world. It's a tale that begins on a quiet, clear morning, September 11th, 2001. The time is early, just before 8 a.m., and across the United States, it's an ordinary day. People are waking up, going about their morning routines. Some are driving to work, others are dropping their children off at school. On the East Coast, the sun rises over the skyline of New York City, casting its first light on the World Trade Center towers, two towering symbols of American power and wealth, standing proud against the sky. At 8:46 a.m., the tranquility of that morning is shattered. American Airlines Flight 11, a commercial jet bound for Los Angeles, is hijacked by 5 terrorists. Within moments, the plane is diverted and crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center between the 93rd and 99th floors. The force of the impact is felt across the city, a loud explosion that sends debris raining down on the streets below. But the most chilling part, my friends, is the confusion. For a few moments, many people think it's just another accident, a plane crash, a tragic but isolated event. The skies above New York are clear, and it seems almost impossible that something like this could happen. But as the minutes pass and the news begins to spread, another plane, United Airlines Flight 175, crashes into the South Tower. This time, there is no mistaking it. The unthinkable has happened. New York City, the heart of America's financial power, is under attack. Meanwhile, across the country, in Washington, D.C., at 9:37 a.m., a third plane, American Airlines Flight 77, hits the Pentagon. The symbol of the United States military now smolders in flames. There's a moment of disbelief. It's happening. The attacks are happening now, live before our very eyes. People are running for safety, some still unaware of the full scale of what is unfolding. Chaos erupts at airports as flights are grounded, and the country braces itself for something even darker. Yet there is still one more plane to come. United Airlines Flight 93. It had departed from Newark, New Jersey, and was on its way to a destination that is still unclear. But something extraordinary happens on this flight. The passengers, aware of the previous attacks and determined not to let the terrorists succeed, revolt. A struggle takes place in the cockpit, and at 10:03 a.m., the plane crashes in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, far from its intended target. And just like that, the world is forever changed. The morning, once bright and full of promise, is now stained with tragedy. The Twin Towers collapse, one by one. The Pentagon burns. The country stands on the brink of something unimaginable. In the immediate aftermath of the attacks, the task before the FBI was clear: find out who was behind this horror and prevent another tragedy from unfolding. The scale of the operation was unprecedented. This was not just another case. It was the largest investigation the agency had ever undertaken. Codenamed PENTTBOM, short for Pennsylvania, Pentagon, and Twin Towers bombing. The investigation was an immense effort. More than half of the FBI's agents were assigned to the case, following leads, gathering intelligence, and attempting to piece together the events that led up to that terrible day. But the truth, friends, is that the investigation didn't begin in the moments after the attacks. It began long before. The pieces of this puzzle had been in motion for years, though no one fully understood how they fit together until it was far too late. You see, long before the hijackers boarded those planes, there were whispers, intelligence, gathered from across the world. The government had been receiving warning signs for months, even years. In fact, it's now known that the CIA and FBI had separate pieces of information that, had they been shared, might have stopped the plot before it had begun. The names of the hijackers, Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, Ziad Jarrah, and others, had appeared on the radar. There were signals, intercepted calls, and alerts sent out. Yet in the whirlwind of bureaucracy and intelligence-sharing failures, those warnings were ignored. At the time, there was a wall between the intelligence agencies and law enforcement, a wall that prevented them from connecting the dots. One of the key failures, as we now know, was the inability to share information that could have prevented the attacks. Had these agencies communicated more effectively, had they been able to see the patterns in the information, perhaps the hijackers would have been stopped before they set foot on those planes. But the investigation was not without its breakthroughs. Within hours of the attacks, the FBI had already identified the 19 hijackers. They quickly traced their movements, from the flight schools in Florida, where several of the men had trained, to their arrivals in the United States. The hijackers had been living among the population, quietly preparing for their mission. And, though the authorities had tracked them, it seemed they never had enough evidence to act. As the hours turned into days, the FBI began to piece together the individuals behind the attacks. The terrorists had been trained in flying, but more importantly, they had been trained in the art of deception. They had carefully blended in with their surroundings, assuming false identities, using student visas to gain entry to the United States, and living seemingly ordinary lives. And yet, the questions remained. How could they have slipped through the cracks? How could they have carried out such an intricate plan without raising suspicion? As the investigation unfolded, more chilling details came to light. The hijackers were not just a random group of men, but part of a larger, more methodical network. A cell of operatives with one singular purpose: to strike at the heart of the United States. These men had been chosen by Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, who had made it clear that he wanted to punish the United States for its foreign policies, particularly its involvement in the Middle East. Bin Laden's network had been planning for years, and the 9/11 attacks were just one part of a much larger strategy. The success of that operation, as it turned out, was not due to the brilliance of the hijackers alone, but to the careful planning and coordination orchestrated by al-Qaeda. But even as the investigation deepened, strange things began to happen. Evidence that seemed to make sense one day would be contradicted the next. Witnesses who had information turned out to be unreliable. And then there were the theories, some of which questioned whether the attacks were really as straightforward as they seemed. Were there others involved? Other players working behind the scenes? Could there have been individuals in high positions who had known about the attack in advance? And if so, why did they fail to act? The more the FBI dug, the more questions arose. Were there others who helped orchestrate the attacks from the shadows? Could the intelligence agencies have done more with the information they had? And most haunting of all, was there a deeper connection between the hijackers and the political forces at play? Forces that may have had their own motives for allowing the attacks to happen. We've learned much in the years since that fateful day. The hijackers, identified in the hours after the attacks, were part of a carefully orchestrated plot that spanned years, touched multiple continents, and wove its way through the very fabric of society. Their training, their planning, their execution, each step was meticulous, calculated, designed to send a message to the world. Osama bin Laden and his al-Qaeda network, the architects of the plot, remained elusive, hiding in the caves of Afghanistan. Their motivations were made clear in the days and years after the attacks. A message of retaliation against U.S. foreign policy, a desire to strike at the heart of American power and symbol. But while the world understood their reasons, the full picture remains incomplete. In the years that followed, the global war on terror unfolded as the United States and its allies sought to dismantle the terrorist network responsible for the attacks. Afghanistan was invaded, the Taliban government toppled, and a decade-long pursuit of bin Laden began. Yet, as the search continued, questions persisted. Despite the advances, despite the raids, despite the intelligence gathered, one fact remains hauntingly clear. For years, bin Laden eluded capture. He hid in plain sight, a ghost in the shadows. And when the day came, in May 2011, when U.S. Navy SEALs finally located and killed bin Laden in his compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. But even then, the answers were not fully realized. The damage had already been done, and the scars would never fully heal. In the immediate aftermath of the attacks, many thought that justice would bring closure. But as we reflect now, we see that the wounds run deeper than anyone could have predicted. The attacks shattered lives. Nearly 3,000 people lost their lives that day, leaving families, communities, and even nations forever altered. The destruction at Ground Zero in New York, the damage to the Pentagon, the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania. Each site became a symbol of sacrifice and loss. But what of those who survived? What of the first responders who rushed into the burning towers, who fought to save lives even as their own were at risk? What of the children who lost parents that day? The families torn apart by tragedy. The legacy of 9/11 isn't just the story of the dead, but the story of the living. Those who carry the burden of that day, who have fought to rebuild, to heal, and to remember. And yet, for all the progress, for all the investigations, there are still questions that linger. We know who the hijackers were. We know their connections. We know the details of their flight training, their movement across the globe. We know the full scale of the destruction they caused. But some details remain just out of reach. Some questions remain unanswered. Was there a deeper conspiracy at play? Could the attacks have been prevented if the pieces of the puzzle had been put together differently? And perhaps most haunting of all, what if we had known more sooner? Could we have stopped them before it was too late? The world has changed irrevocably since September 11th. The war on terror reshaped entire nations, transformed foreign policies, and altered the way we live our daily lives. We now live in a world of heightened security, where every airport, every building, every public space is scrutinized. The legacy of 9/11 has brought us both vigilance and paranoia. It has brought us unity and division. But perhaps the most unsettling legacy of that day is the one we cannot see. The cost of war, the unseen wounds of those who served in the years that followed, the toll on our own psyche as a nation. Thousands of men and women returned home from the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, only to face invisible battles with their health, their mental well-being, and the ghosts of a war that never fully ended. And so, the question remains, what does it mean to remember September 11th? Is it enough to honor the dead, or must we also confront the unseen costs of what came after? The loss, the confusion, the years of searching for answers. What do we truly understand about that day now? So many years later, the story, it seems, is still unfolding. In the rubble of Ground Zero, in the streets of New York, in the halls of Washington, in the hearts of the families who lost so much, the echoes of September 11th still reverberate. And as we reflect, I leave you with this final thought. Is the pursuit of justice ever truly complete? Or is it something we must carry with us as a nation for the rest of our lives?